The call from my mother came at the worst possible time. I was in the middle of a crucial marketing presentation, trying to convince the board that our new campaign would reverse the company's recent decline. My phone kept buzzing insistently in my pocket. 3 calls in 5 minutes. I knew it had to be her. "I'm sorry," I said to the room full of executives, their faces a mix of annoyance and curiosity. "I need to take this. Family emergency." It wasn't an emergency, of course. It never was with my mother. But if I didn't answer, she'd keep calling until I did. I stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and irritation. "Mom, I'm in the middle of an important meeting. What's so urgent?" "Tessa, darling." Her voice was sweet as honey, which immediately put me on high alert. "Your father and I have been talking, and we've made a decision about our 40th anniversary next month." I pressed my fingers against my temple, feeling the familiar tension headache forming. "That's great, Mom, but couldn't this wait until after work hours?" "Don't be so dramatic, Tessa. This is important family business." She paused for effect. "We want a country house as our anniversary gift." I almost laughed, thinking it was a joke. "A country house? You mean like a weekend rental?" "No, dear. A house. To own. Nothing extravagant, just a nice 3-bedroom with some land. There's one we've had our eye on in the Catskills. Only $650,000. We figured since you're doing so well at your job, this would be the perfect gift from our successful daughter." The hallway seemed to tilt slightly beneath my feet. "Mom, that's not a reasonable request. I can't afford to buy you a house." "But you just got that big promotion. Your father and I have given you everything, Tessa. We put you through college. We supported your move to the city. The least you could do is give back to us now." I bit back the retort that threatened to escape. The truth was that I had put myself through college with scholarships and student loans I was still paying off. My parents hadn't contributed a dime. And far from supporting my move to the city, they had criticized me constantly, telling me I was making a mistake, that I'd never succeed. What they conveniently forgot was that I had been supporting them financially for the past decade. Monthly deposits into their account, medical bills paid, home repairs covered, credit card debt settled, all while trying to build my own life and career. "Mom, I already help you and Dad financially. You know that. I send you money every month." "That's different," she said dismissively. "This is a gift for our anniversary. Don't you want us to be happy?" The guilt trip, her favorite tactic. I glanced back at the boardroom where my colleagues were waiting, my career literally hanging in the balance while my mother demanded I buy her a house. "I need to get back to my meeting. We'll talk about this later." "Your sister already agreed to chip in what she can," my mother added quickly. "And your brother is contributing too. They know what family means." Of course they did. My sister, Diane, lived rent-free in my parents' basement with her husband and worked part-time at a gift shop. My brother Eric had just borrowed $30,000 from me to start a business that I knew would fail like all his previous ventures. Their contributions would be symbolic at best. "I have to go, Mom. I'll call you tonight." I ended the call and stood in the hallway for a moment, trying to compose myself. This was so typical. Every time I achieved something in my career, my family found a way to claim it as their success and then demand their share. When I made manager at 28, they needed a new car. When I received my first significant bonus, my brother needed bail money. When I bought my apartment, my mother hinted for months that I should put the down payment on a place for them instead. Taking a deep breath, I returned to the boardroom, pasting on a professional smile and diving back into my presentation. But inside, I was seething. Not just at the request itself, but at the lifetime of similar expectations that had preceded it. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone. I should call her back, get this over with. But I knew how the conversation would go. She would insist. I would refuse. She would cry or get angry. My father would get on the line to tell me what a disappointment I was. Then one of my siblings would call to tell me I was being selfish. Same script, different day. I poured myself a generous glass of wine and called anyway. Tessa, hold on. I'm putting you on speaker so your father can hear. Great. An ambush. Hi. Dad? I said, my voice already tired. Tessa. His acknowledgement was curt. Your mother tells me you're being difficult about our anniversary gift. I'm not being difficult. I'm being realistic. I can't afford to buy you a house. Can't or won't, my mother chimed in. Both, I admitted. Dad, I'm already sending you $2,000 every month. I paid for your new roof last year and Mom's dental work and the property taxes when you fell behind. That's what family does, he replied, as if I'd brought up something trivial. We support each other. Your mother and I sacrificed everything for you kids. Did they? I took another sip of wine, larger this time. What exactly had they sacrificed? My father had worked the same middle management job for 30 years, coming home to watch TV and complain. My mother had dabbled in part-time work when it suited her, but mostly spent her time in social clubs and church groups where she could brag about her children's accomplishments as if they were her own. Meanwhile, I had worked since I was 15. Paper routes, fast food, retail, all through high school. 2 jobs during college while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. Internships that paid nothing but opened doors. Countless late nights and early mornings climbing the corporate ladder. All while being told I wasn't doing enough for the family. I love you both, I said carefully. But this request is beyond what I can do. I'm happy to help plan a nice anniversary party. Maybe a weekend getaway somewhere special. But I can't buy a house. Your sister said you'd react this way, my mother said with a sigh. She said you've changed, that you care more about your fancy job and city friends than your own family. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Tessa, my father interjected. You know what's not fair? Working my fingers to the bone for 40 years and not having anything to show for it. You know what's not fair? Watching my daughter become successful and then turn her back on us. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar guilt and resentment rising in my chest. This was their specialty, rewriting history to make themselves the victims and me the villain. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the unreasonableness of their demand. Maybe it was the cumulative weight of years of similar conversations. Or maybe I was just finally tired enough to see clearly. I haven't turned my back on anyone, I said, my voice firmer than usual. I've been supporting this family financially for years, often at the expense of my own financial security. I'm still paying off student loans. I'm trying to save for retirement. I can't afford to buy you a house, and it's not fair of you to ask. I knew it, my mother said, her voice dripping with disappointment. You've always been the selfish one, ever since you were little. Your sister warned me not to even ask you, but I thought, surely my own daughter wouldn't turn her back on us for our anniversary. Mom, that's not what's happening. Save it, Tessa, my father cut in. If that's your final answer, we have nothing more to talk about. Your mother is upset now, thanks to you. I heard shuffling on the other end, then my mother's voice, further, away from the phone. I just don't understand where we went wrong with her, Robert. After everything we've done. The call ended abruptly. I sat there, staring at my phone, a familiar mix of emotions washing over me. Guilt, anger, frustration, and beneath it all, a deep, aching sadness. Why couldn't I ever be enough for them? Why was it always my fault? I didn't sleep well that night. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, thinking of all the things I should have said. By morning, I had resolved to stand my ground. This wasn't about an anniversary gift. This was about years of emotional manipulation and financial exploitation disguised as family obligation. 2 days later, I received a group text from my sister. Family meeting at Mom and Dad's this Saturday. Everyone needs to be there, especially you, Tessa. I knew what this was about. They were rallying the troops against me, but I decided to go anyway. Maybe, just maybe, I could make them understand my perspective for once. That Saturday, I drove. The 90 minutes to my parents' suburban home, my stomach in knots the entire way. I'd spent the morning reviewing my finances with my financial advisor, confirming what I already knew. Between my own expenses, savings goals, and what I already gave to my family, I had no room to purchase a second property, especially not one, worth over $500,000. The family cars were already in the driveway when I arrived. Last to arrive, as usual, despite being the only one who didn't live within a 15-minute drive. I took a deep breath and went inside without knocking, a habit from childhood that suddenly felt presumptuous. They were all in the living room. My parents, my sister Diane and her husband Pete, my brother Eric, and surprisingly, my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, who typically stayed out of family drama. Their conversations halted when I walked in, replaced by pointed looks and thin smiles. "There she is," my mother said, her tone making it clear that my timely arrival wasn't going to earn me any points. "We were just discussing the anniversary plans." "Hi, everyone," I said, taking the only remaining seat, a hard-backed chair positioned, slightly outside the circle, almost like an afterthought. Or an interrogation setup. My father sat in his recliner, newspaper folded on his lap, not making eye contact. My mother perched on the arm of his chair, her posture rigid with disapproval. Diane and Pete occupied the love seat, while Eric sprawled on the couch next to Aunt Linda, who offered me a sympathetic smile. "So," my sister began without preamble, "Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary is a big milestone. We need to do something special." I nodded. "I agree. I was thinking we could plan a nice celebration. Maybe rent a venue, hire a good photographer, make it memorable." "We were thinking of something more lasting," Diane continued. "Something that would really show appreciation for all they've done for us." "Like what?" I asked, though I knew exactly where this was headed. "Mom and Dad have always wanted a place in the country," Eric chimed in. "Somewhere they could retire eventually, maybe have the grandkids visit in the summer." "I'm aware of that," I said carefully. "But a house is a major investment. It's not something I can afford to give as a gift." "Not by yourself," Diane agreed. "That's why we're all going to contribute." "How much are each of you contributing?" I asked pointedly. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Pete suddenly became very interested in his phone. Eric cleared his throat. "Well, we're still working out the exact numbers," my sister finally said. "But we thought you could cover the down payment, and we'd all chip in for the monthly mortgage." I blinked at her, momentarily speechless. "So I would pay what? $130,000. Up front, and then what's my share of the monthly payment?" More uncomfortable shifting. My mother stepped in. "Tessa, we know you're doing very well in your career. This wouldn't be a hardship for you, like it would be for Diane and Eric. They have families to support." "I don't have a family," the unspoken implication hung in the air. "Just a job and a lonely apartment. What else would I spend my money on?" "Mom, I have financial responsibilities too. I send you and Dad money every month. I help when emergencies come up. I've been doing that for years, but I can't afford to buy a house." "We're not asking you to buy it outright," Eric said, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "We'd all be contributing." "How much exactly would you be contributing, Eric?" I asked. "Given that you still owe me $30,000 from your last business venture." His face flushed. "That's different. That was a loan." "Which you haven't made a single payment on," I pointed out. "And now you want me to put down a massive down payment on a house that won't even be in my name?" "This isn't about money," my mother interjected. "This is about honoring your parents." "It is absolutely about money," I countered. "If it wasn't, we'd be discussing a party or a photo album or a trip, not real estate." Aunt Linda spoke up for the first time. "I think what Tessa is trying to say is that there are many ways to celebrate an anniversary that don't involve such a significant financial commitment." I shot her a grateful look, but my mother was already shaking her head. "Linda, You don't understand. This is what we want. Is it so wrong for parents to expect their children to give back after all we've sacrificed? My father finally looked up from his paper. When I was your age, Tessa, I would have done anything for my parents. Anything they asked. That's what respect means. Something snapped inside me then. Years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the family ATM, all while being told I wasn't doing enough. I've been giving back for over a decade, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions roiling within me. I've paid for repairs on this house. I've covered medical bills. I've bailed out Eric more times than I can count. I've supported all of you financially while trying to build my own life. And every single time I set a boundary, I'm made to feel like I'm selfish or disrespectful. Oh, here we go, Diane rolled her eyes. Saint Tessa, so put upon because she has to share her good fortune. Good fortune? I repeated incredulously. You think this is about good fortune? I've worked for everything I have. 60-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships, postponed having a family of my own, all while sending a significant portion of my income to support all of you. No one forced you to do that, my father said dismissively. Really? Because every time I've tried to cut back, there's been a crisis, or tears, or accusations that I don't care about my family. So yes, I have felt forced. The room fell silent again, this time with a different quality, stunned rather than awkward. I've made a decision, I continued, surprising even myself with what I was about to say. Starting today, I'm discontinuing my financial support, all of it. The monthly deposits, the emergency funds, all of it. My mother gasped. Eric sat up straight. Diane's mouth fell open. You can't be serious, my father said, his newspaper now forgotten on the floor. I'm completely serious. I've been enabling an unhealthy dynamic for years, and it stops now. I love you all, but I can't keep sacrificing my own financial security to meet increasingly unreasonable demands. So that's it? My mother's voice trembled. You're abandoning us because we asked for one special gift? I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm setting a boundary. I'm happy to be part of your lives. I'm happy to spend time together, to help in non-financial ways. But the monetary support ends today. I stood up, feeling simultaneously lighter and heavier than I had in years. I should go. I don't think there's anything else to discuss right now. If you walk out that door, Tessa, my father said, his voice low and threatening, don't bother coming back. I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. Not as the father I'd spent decades trying to please, but as a man who had grown comfortable with exploitation disguised as parental authority. I love you, Dad, but that's not going to work anymore. I turned and walked out, ignoring the eruption of voices behind me. In my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I waited for the crushing guilt to descend. But instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the highway. First my mother, then my sister, then my brother. I silenced it and drove home in a strange, peaceful silence. The confrontation I dreaded for years had finally happened, and I had survived. The first few weeks after what I'd come to think of as the family meeting incident were a barrage of emotional warfare. Text messages alternated between guilt, trips, Mom cried all night, threats, you'll regret this when we're gone, and attempts to make me jealous. We had such a lovely Sunday dinner, too bad you weren't there to enjoy it. Phone calls went from pleading to angry to coldly manipulative. Diane orchestrated most of it, I suspected. She had the most to lose from my financial withdrawal. She and Pete had been living rent-free in my parents' finished basement for 3 years, ostensibly while saving for their own place. In reality, they saved nothing, spending freely on restaurants and weekend trips while I subsidized their lifestyle through my support of our parents. Eric took a different approach. He showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening, all contrition and charm. Hey sis, he said when I opened the door, holding up a bottle of wine and a takeout bag from my favorite Thai place. Thought we could talk. Just us. I should have turned him away, but old habits die hard. I let him in, and we sat at my small dining table, the city lights twinkling through the window behind us. "Look," he began after pouring us each a glass. "I know things got intense at Mom and Dad's, but you have to understand where they're coming from. Their whole lives have been about us kids. They just want to feel like it meant something, you know?" I took a sip of wine, studying my brother's face. Handsome, charismatic Eric. The golden child who could do no wrong, even when he dropped out of college, even when he got arrested for drunk driving, even when he burned through my money with one failed business venture after another. "What do you really want, Eric?" I asked quietly. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Tessa, come on. We're just talking." "No, we're not. You've come with an agenda, so let's hear it." He sighed, dropping the pretense. "Okay, fine. I need the money you promised for the food truck business. We've already put down deposits on equipment. If you back out now, I'll lose everything I've invested." "You mean everything I've invested," I corrected. "And I didn't promise anything. I said I'd consider it after seeing a business plan, which you never provided. Because I know you, Tessa. You'd have picked it apart with all your corporate metrics and projections." "Some businesses are about passion and vision, not spreadsheets." "Those businesses usually fail," I pointed out. He leaned forward, eyes earnest. "Not this time. I've got a solid concept, a prime location lined up. I just need that initial capital. 20,000 more. That's all I'm asking." "What happened to the 30,000 I already gave you?" He waved a hand dismissively. "Startup costs were higher than expected, but we're so close now." I shook my head. "I'm not giving you any more money, Eric, and I meant what I said at Mom and Dad's. I'm done being the family bank." His expression darkened. "So, that's it? Years of me being there for you, supporting you, and this is how you repay me?" I almost laughed. "Been there for me how exactly? When have you ever supported me?" "I've always had your back, Tessa. Who defended you when Dad was on your case about your career choices? Who listened to you complain about your dating life and jobs and everything else?" This revisionist history was astounding. "That never happened, Eric. You've never defended me to Dad. And the few times I've tried to talk to you about my life, you've changed the subject back to yourself within minutes." He stood up abruptly, the charm vanishing. "You know what? Diane was right about you. You've changed, gotten cold, forgotten where you came from." "I haven't forgotten anything," I said calmly. "That's the problem." After he left, I poured myself another glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the city I'd fought so hard to make my home. 10 years of sending money back to my family, of taking their calls at all hours, of rearranging my life to meet their needs. 10 years of being told it wasn't enough, that I was selfish for having boundaries, that my success was somehow a betrayal. No more. I blocked their numbers that night. All of them except Aunt Linda, who had texted me once, "I understand. Take care of yourself. I'm here if you need me." I also sent emails to my parents and siblings explaining my decision to take a break from communication, that I would reach out when I was ready, and asking them to respect my boundaries in the meantime. Then I did something I'd never done before. I booked a vacation. 2 weeks in Portugal, alone. No schedule, no obligations, no one to please but myself. I'd always wanted to go to Europe but had put it off, telling myself I couldn't afford it while supporting my family. Now I could. The night before my trip, I had dinner with my closest friend, Mia, who had witnessed my family drama from a safe distance over the years. "I still can't believe you finally did it," she said, raising her glass in a toast. "To freedom." "It doesn't feel real yet," I admitted. "Part of me is waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to show up at my door or my office. And if they do," I considered this, "I'll hold my boundary. It's not just about the money anymore. It's It's about respect, about being treated like an autonomous adult, not a resource to be exploited. Mia nodded approvingly. Look at you, all grown up and setting healthy boundaries. I'm proud of you, Tess. Thanks. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. Sometimes I wonder if I'm overreacting, if I'm the villain in this story. You're not, Mia said firmly. Trust me. I've seen this dynamic play out for years. They've been taking advantage of you. And the fact that they're so upset now only proves how accustomed they've become to using you. I nodded, letting her words sink in. For so long, I'd second-guessed my own perceptions, gaslighted by my family into believing their needs should always supersede my own. It was refreshing to have my reality validated. So what's next? Mia asked. After Portugal, I mean. I shrugged. I'm not sure. Focus on my career. Maybe start dating again. I've been so consumed with family drama and work that I haven't made much time for a personal life. Well, you're quite a catch, Tessa Morris. Successful, smart, newly unburdened by financial obligations to ungrateful relatives, the dating world. Won't know what hit it. I laughed, but the idea took root. What would my life look like now that I wasn't sending a substantial portion of my income to my family? Now that I wasn't constantly available for their crises and demands? The possibilities were both exhilarating and terrifying. Portugal was transformative. Without the constant ping of guilt-inducing messages from my family, I found myself truly relaxing for the first time in years. I wandered through Lisbon's narrow streets, ate dinner at sidewalk cafes, took day trips to coastal towns where I sat on empty beaches and watched the Atlantic crash against ancient cliffs. I thought about my family, of course, but with distance, both physical and emotional, came clarity. I could see patterns I'd been too close to recognize before. How my mother's emergencies always seemed to coincide with my achievements. How my father's approval was perpetually just out of reach. How my siblings had been trained, as I had, to view me primarily as a source of financial support rather than as a person with needs and limits of her own. One evening, sitting on the balcony of my rented apartment in Porto, watching the sunset over the Douro River, I finally acknowledged a truth I'd been avoiding. I didn't miss them. Not the way they were now, at least. I missed the idea of family, supportive, loving, mutually respectful, but that wasn't what I had. When I returned to New York, tanned and more centered than I'd felt in years, there were consequences waiting. For me, as expected. My parents had apparently shown up at my office while I was away, creating a scene in the lobby when security wouldn't let them up. My sister had left scathing reviews of my company online. My brother had told mutual acquaintances that I was having a mental breakdown, but there were unexpected developments too. My promotion had come through, with a significant salary increase. A colleague I'd always been attracted to asked me to dinner, and most surprisingly, I received an email from my cousin Sarah, my Aunt Linda's daughter, whom I hadn't seen in years. I heard what happened with the family, she wrote. Aunt Janet, my mother has been calling my mom daily to complain about you, but I want you to know that I think you're brave. They've been taking advantage of you for as long as I can remember, and it's about time someone stood up to them. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. It was a small thing, that email, but it meant everything to know that someone else in the family saw the truth of the situation. I started therapy shortly after returning from Portugal. It was something I'd considered for years, but had always put off, telling myself I couldn't afford it. Now I realized I couldn't afford not to. Family systems can be incredibly powerful, Dr. Chen said during our second session. When someone tries to change the established dynamic, the system will often resist strongly, trying to pull that person back into their assigned role. That's exactly what's happening, I said. They're cycling through every manipulation tactic they know. And when I don't respond, they escalate. Dr. Chen nodded. It's important to understand that this isn't personal, even though it feels deeply personal. They're not necessarily bad people, but they've become dependent on you in ways that aren't healthy for anyone involved. So what do? You keep doing what you're doing. Maintain your boundaries. Focus on building the life you want. And be prepared for things to get worse before they get better. Change is hard, and some relationships may not survive the transition. I sat with that uncomfortable truth. Was I prepared to permanently estrange myself from my family? Was that even what I wanted? I don't know what I want the end result to be, I admitted. Part of me hopes they'll come around, recognize their behavior, and we can build a healthier relationship. But another part of me thinks that's just wishful thinking. It might be, Dr. Chen agreed. People rarely change unless they're motivated to do so. And right now, their motivation is to get you to return to your previous role, not to examine their own behavior. So I just wait, see what happens? You live your life, she corrected gently. You didn't put your life on hold when you were supporting them, and you shouldn't put it on hold waiting for them to change. If a healthier relationship is possible, it will develop organically over time. If not, you'll have built a fulfilling life regardless. It was simple advice, but profound. For too long, I'd organized my life around my family's needs and expectations. Now it was time to discover what I wanted for myself. I started with small changes. I redecorated my apartment, something I'd been putting off for years. I joined a weekly hiking group. I accepted dinner invitations I would have previously declined because I was too busy, often with family obligations. I went on dates, some terrible, some promising. The most significant change, though, was internal. Without the constant drain of financial and emotional support to my family, I found myself with more energy, more creativity, more joy. My work improved, my health improved, even my appearance improved. Several people commented that I looked younger, less stressed. 4 months after the confrontation at my parents' house, I received a formal invitation to their 40th anniversary party. No request for money, no mention of a house, just an invitation like I was any other guest. It was scheduled for my father's birthday, a date I knew well. I debated for weeks whether to attend. Dr. Chen advised me to consider what I wanted from the interaction and what boundaries I needed to maintain. My friend Mia thought it was a trap. My cousin Sarah, with whom I'd rekindled a relationship, offered to go with me as moral support. In the end, I decided to go, alone. I wasn't ready to bring anyone from my new life into that environment, but I also wasn't willing to hide from my family forever, and perhaps, I thought optimistically, this was their way of extending an olive branch. I should have known better. The party was held at a modest banquet hall near my parents' home, decorated with gold and white balloons and a banner celebrating 40 years of love. About 50 people were in attendance: extended family, church friends, neighbors, my parents' longtime social circle. I arrived intentionally late, hoping to slip in unobtrusively. But the moment I walked through the door, conversations halted and heads turned. My mother, resplendent in a new dress I was certain she couldn't afford, approached with a tight smile. "Tessa, you came. How nice." Her voice was cool, her hug perfunctory. "Happy anniversary, Mom," I said, handing her a wrapped gift, a beautiful photo album I'd had professionally assembled with family pictures from happier times. "Thank you." She set it aside without opening it. "Your father is over there with your Uncle Jim. I'm sure he'll be surprised to see you." I made my way through the crowd, nodding at relatives who either looked confused by my presence or deliberately avoided eye contact. My cousin Sarah, at least, greeted me warmly, as did Aunt Linda. But there was a tension in the air, an expectancy, as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. At the center table, my father sat like a king, holding court, laughing loudly at something my uncle had said. He didn't notice me at first, but when he did, his expression shifted from jovial to stony in an instant. "Dad," I said, forcing a smile, "happy anniversary, and happy birthday." He nodded curtly. Tessa, didn't think you'd show your face here. I was invited, I reminded him. Yes. Well, your mother's idea. She said we should, what was the phrase? Extend the opportunity for reconciliation. He said it like it was a joke, or perhaps a trap. Before I could respond, my sister appeared, at my elbow, thrusting a name tag into my hand. Here, everyone's wearing them. I looked down at the sticky label. In my sister's neat handwriting, it read, Tessa, the disappointment. I stared at it, momentarily speechless, then looked up to see my sister's smirk, my father's challenging gaze, and my stepmother's, wait, what? My stepmother. That's when I noticed the woman sitting beside my father, her hand possessively on his arm. Not my mother, but Judith Benson, my parents' neighbor for the past 5 years. A widow who had always been just a little too friendly with my father. What is this? I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Oh, didn't you hear? Diane's voice was syrupy sweet. Mom and Dad are separated. Have been for months. Judith is Dad's special friend. I looked around the room with new understanding. This wasn't a 40th anniversary party. It was a farce, a setup designed to humiliate me publicly. Where's Mom? I asked. Around somewhere, my father said dismissively. Probably in the kitchen, making sure everything's perfect. As usual. Judith laughed, a tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. Robert, you should put on your name tag too. We all are. She took one from her purse and stuck it to my father's chest. It read, Robert, the birthday boy. I was still holding the label Diane had given me, staring at the word disappointment as it blurred slightly in my vision. Well, my sister prodded, aren't you going to put it on, unless you think it's inaccurate? I looked up, taking in the scene. My father with his new girlfriend at what was supposedly his anniversary party. My sister's malicious grin, the room full of people who had been invited to witness my humiliation. Something shifted inside me then, a final thread snapping. For so long, I'd been working toward a reconciliation, hoping for a relationship that could be salvaged. But this wasn't a family that wanted healing. This was a family that wanted a scapegoat, a punching bag, a bank account. I smiled, a genuine smile that seemed to throw my sister off balance. Then I carefully affixed the name tag to my dress. My father chuckled. Well, at least she's honest about what she is. Judith laughed too. Well, it's true, isn't it? After everything your parents did for you, and you couldn't even help them with one little gift. That this woman, a virtual stranger who was apparently sleeping with my father while he was still married to my mother, felt entitled to weigh in on family matters was the final straw. I stood up straighter, picked up a fork, and tapped it against a nearby water glass. The clear, ringing sound cut through the murmur of conversation, and gradually the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward me. I'd like to make a toast, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions roiling within me. To my father on his birthday, and to what was supposed to be my parents' 40th anniversary. Uneasy glances were exchanged throughout the room. Clearly, not everyone had been informed of the true nature of the gathering. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tessa Morris, Robert and Janet's eldest daughter. Or, as my name tag helpfully identifies me, I gestured to the label on my chest. The disappointment. A few uncomfortable laughs, quickly hushed. My father's face darkened. This name tag was given to me by my sister with my father's approval, and his companion, I nodded toward Judith, thinks it's quite amusing and accurate. Because, you see, I committed the unforgivable sin of refusing to buy my parents a country house as an anniversary gift, a house that would have cost over $500,000. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother had emerged from wherever she'd been hiding and stood at the back of the room, her face pale. What most of you don't know is that I've been financially supporting my parents for over a decade. Monthly deposits, emergency funds, medical bills, home repairs. Tens of thousands of dollars every year at the expense of my own financial security. My father half rose from his chair. Tessa, that's enough. No, Dad, it's not, I said calmly. You invited me here to humiliate me in front of everyone who matters to you. You labeled me the disappointment and expected me to accept it. But I'm done accepting the roles you assign me. I raised my water glass higher. So I'd like to make a toast to the last time you'll ever see me, to the end of financial support, emotional manipulation, and public humiliation disguised as family, love. To your future, without me in it. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice shifting in glasses. My father's face had gone from red to white. My sister looked stunned. My mother had one hand pressed to her mouth. I took a sip from my glass, then set it down carefully. Goodbye, Dad. Happy birthday. I hope it was worth it. I turned and walked toward the exit, my head high, ignoring the shocked whispers that followed me. At the door, I paused and removed one last item from my purse, a check, which I placed on the gift table. It wasn't for the house they'd demanded. It was for a much smaller amount, $1,143.27. Exactly what I'd calculated they had spent on me from age 18 onward, adjusted for inflation. The final gift. Payment in full for any debt I might have owed them, real or imagined. Outside, the night. Air was cool and sweet against my flushed skin. I walked to my car, each step lighter than the last. No one followed me. No one called my name. And for the first time in my adult life, that felt like a victory rather than a failure. Driving home that night, I called my cousin Sarah from the car's Bluetooth. I left, I told her when she answered. Walked out, for good this time. Are you okay? She asked, concern evident in her voice. I considered the question seriously. Yes, I said finally. I really am. It hurts, but it's the clean pain of cauterization, not the festering kind I've been living with. What happened? I told her about the name tag, about Judith, about my impromptu speech and final exit. Holy shit, Tessa, Sarah breathed when I finished. That's actually amazing. I wish I'd stayed to see it. It wasn't planned, I admitted, but it felt right. Final. What now? Now I live my life, without them in it. It wasn't quite that simple, of course. There were attempts at contact in the weeks that followed. My mother left tearful voicemails claiming she'd had no idea about the name tag, that she was blindsided by my father's relationship with Judith. My brother sent texts alternating between anger and half-hearted apologies. A few flying monkeys, family, friends, and distant relatives reached out to tell me I was being too harsh, that family was family, that I should forgive and forget. I didn't respond to any of it, not out of spite or anger, but because I finally understood that there was nothing left to say. The relationship had been broken long before the party, perhaps irreparably. Instead, I focused on building a life that wasn't defined by my family's expectations or demands. I accepted the promotion I'd been offered at work, which came with more responsibility but also more creative control. I started dating more seriously, eventually meeting Michael, a kind and steady architect who valued independence as much as I did. I deepened my friendships, traveled more, discovered new interests. 6 months after the party, I ran into my brother at a coffee shop in the city. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, looked more put together than I'd seen. Him in years. Tessa, he said, clearly as surprised to see me as I was to see him. Hey, Eric. Hi. I stayed where I was, uncertain whether to approach or maintain my distance. He made the decision for me, walking over to my table. Can I join you? Just for a minute? I hesitated, then nodded. He sat down, fidgeting with his coffee cup. You look good, he said finally. Really good. Thanks. So do you. Yeah, well, he shrugged. I've been making some changes. Got a job, a real one, at a tech startup. Been there 3 months now. That's great, I said. meaning it. I'm happy for you. He nodded, still not quite meeting my eyes. Things have been different since you left. Dad and Judith moved in together. Mom's living with Aunt Linda temporarily. Diane and Pete finally got their own place. I absorbed this information without comment. It wasn't surprising that my withdrawal of financial support had forced changes. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Eric continued, at the party, about supporting everyone for years. I never really saw it that way. But you were right. We used you. I used you. And I'm sorry. The apology caught me off guard. In our family, apologies were rare and usually accompanied by excuses or deflections. This seemed different. Thank you for saying that, I said carefully. It means a lot. I'm not asking for anything, he added quickly. I know I've burned that bridge, but I wanted you to know that I'm working on myself, trying to be better. I nodded, a complex mix of emotions washing over me: caution, hope, skepticism, pride. I'm glad to hear that, Eric. Really. We talked for a few more minutes, awkward but civil. He told me about his job. I told him about my promotion. As he was leaving, he hesitated. Diane's having a baby, he said. Due in August. She's still Diane, bitter about a lot of things, but I thought you should know. Thanks for telling me. I wasn't sure what else to say. The news didn't fill me with the warmth or excitement it might have once. He nodded, understanding. Take care of yourself, Tess. You too, Eric. I watched him leave, feeling a strange mixture of closure and new beginning. It wasn't reconciliation, not really, but it was acknowledgement, which was more than I'd ever expected. I thought about contacting Diane, congratulating her on the pregnancy, but I knew she wasn't ready for that, might never be. Our relationship had always been the most fraught, built on competition and comparison rather than genuine sisterhood. Her orchestration of the name tag incident had been the final confirmation of what I'd long suspected. She didn't want me in her life unless it was in a subservient role. As for my parents, I remained firm in my decision to keep my distance. My father had made his choices, replacing his wife of nearly 40 years with a neighbor and publicly humiliating his daughter. My mother had been both victim and enabler, too willing to sacrifice her children's well-being for her husband's approval. Both had treated me as a resource rather than a person, and neither had shown genuine remorse or understanding of the harm they'd caused. Yet something had shifted in me since that night at the party. The anger that had fueled my exit had cooled, replaced by something quieter but more enduring: acceptance. Acceptance that my family would never be what I'd wanted them to be. Acceptance that I couldn't change them, only my response to them. Acceptance that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to walk away. A year. After the confrontation, I found myself in a small cafe in Lisbon, the city I'd fallen in love with during my first solo vacation. Michael and I were spending 2 weeks traveling through Portugal and Spain, a trip we'd planned for months. Sitting across from him, watching him study the menu with endearing concentration, I felt a surge of gratitude for the life I'd built since walking away from my family. What? He asked, catching me staring. Nothing, I smiled. Just happy. He reached across the table to take my hand. Me too. My phone buzzed with a text notification. I glanced at it, expecting a message from work or a friend back home. Instead, I saw my mother's name, the first direct contact in months. I know you probably won't read this, she'd written, but I wanted to let you know that your father and I are officially divorced. It was finalized yesterday. He's engaged. To Judith now. I'm staying with Linda indefinitely and looking for a job for the first time in 40 years. It's terrifying, but also freeing in a way. I understand a little better now what you meant about boundaries and independence. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know. I stared at the message, conflicting emotions washing over me. Michael noticed the change in my expression. "Everything okay?" I handed him the phone, letting him read the message. He looked up at me, his gaze thoughtful. "How do you feel about that?" I considered the question carefully. Sad for her. Relieved it's over. A little vindicated, maybe, which isn't my proudest emotion. He squeezed my hand. "All valid feelings. Are you going to respond?" Was I? I hadn't planned to maintain contact with any of them, had been firm in that boundary for a year, but something in my mother's message seemed different from previous attempts. Less manipulative, more introspective. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to. Another part thinks it's safer to maintain distance." "You don't have to decide right now," he reminded me. "Take your time. See how you feel in a day or two." I nodded, putting my phone away. He was right. There was no rush, no emergency, no crisis demanding my immediate attention. That was one of the many gifts of the boundaries I'd established, the freedom to respond on my own timeline, according to my own needs and feelings, rather than being swept up in the urgency of others' demands. Later that night, standing on the balcony of our rented apartment, looking out at the same view that had given me such clarity a year before, I thought about the journey I'd taken. From dutiful daughter and financial savior to the family disappointment. From guilt-ridden enabler to a woman with firm boundaries and a fulfilling life of her own. I thought about my name tag at that fateful party. Tessa, the disappointment. And I realized that disappointing people who had unreasonable expectations of me wasn't a failure. It was a necessary step toward becoming the person I wanted to be, rather than the person they needed me to be. I picked up my phone and typed a brief response to my mother. "Thank you for letting me know. I hope you find your way forward, as I've found mine." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement of her pain, of our shared history, of the possibility that we might both be finding new ways to exist in the world. As I pressed send, I felt no anxiety, no second-guessing, no familiar twist of guilt in my stomach. Just the quiet certainty that I was living according to my own values now, making choices based on what was healthy for me rather than what was expected of me. The disappointment had become her own kind of freedom.